Egypt has been a very active participant in the international sovereign bond market. Can you tell us is the market functioning smoothly?
Thank you very much, Homi, and I'm very happy to be joining this high-level seminar. Let me say that, or reflect on what was said. One very important point going forward is that countries need to distinguish themselves by having compelling stories. This is something that Egypt has been doing very actively through different principles. We have been leading country-led multi-stakeholder frameworks through principles of economic diplomacy. And it was mentioned, where is the financing going? So we have been doing mapping exercises for the ODA financing to the SDG goals. And this has been published on our website and also through a book most recently. And we're very happy that the president of ECOSOC was part of that launch and gave feedback on the methodology that was used and the transparency and governance. This is the way that you are able to mobilize further resources, whether they are from international markets, from development partners, or even trying to give a compelling story for the private sector to come in. So Egypt's access to the sovereign market, and here we were the first country in the Middle East and Africa to issue green bonds. And we just heard from Joyce the importance of green bonds and how the market has grown in that space. So it's by providing very clear where the financing is going, which SDGs are being met, how far we are in terms of the gaps that are going forward. These are all very important distinguishing factors that create compelling evidence for investors to come in, for us to be able to access the international markets. Something else, and we're very proud that with the United Nations, we are also launching the Integrated National Financing Framework. And this builds on the ODA SDG mapping that we did in the Ministry of International Cooperation, so we can see replication of that to other sources of finance. Private sector engagement was mentioned more than once, and this is also a key element of the objectives within our strategy as a country and within the principles of economic diplomacy that we have in the Ministry of the Ministry of International Cooperation. So all of these are very important reform points, reform actions that we are taking as a government to be able to tap on the international market. And we're very proud that the country, on the contrary, has always had a very positive outlook with rating agencies, notwithstanding what happened in COVID. So all of this push, adds to the compelling story. And let me conclude by saying that reforms are a continuous process. We had reforms before COVID, and we are continuing reforms until now and going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And really, congratulations, I think, on Egypt's performance and the innovations that you're introducing, specifically the innovations on mapping between finance and SDGs. And using that as the evidence for telling your story as to why Egypt is an attractive destination for investors. So, Ms. Al-Mashat, I mean, you're a practitioner right now. You're, dealing with markets, trying to, as you say, tell this compelling story about Egypt. How does this discussion sound to you? Would it help you if you had all of this information publicly available?
I mean, a few things were mentioned and highlighted, which are extremely important. The role of multilateral development banks in providing not just sovereign lending opportunities, but also to the private sector. And this is an extremely important point that we also call for in our discussions with the MDB. So that's something very important. And that entails a high level of engagement, a high level of transparency, governance. So all of these are important points that governments have to do anyway, and they become even more pending now because, as I mentioned, and it was also discussed from previous speakers, that there is a diversity among creditors and debtors, and you need to distinguish yourself. So more transparency is a good practice. It's even more compelling now because you want to distinguish yourself from the bigger spectrum of countries. So I would say that something else which is quite important is to reduce the redundancy that sometimes takes place. So that's where bringing all stakeholders together to ensure that we have complementarity. Finance is, regardless of what type of finance, it's a space which is very precious now. So countries that are in their development trajectory need to ensure that they are engaged in ways that create this complementarity. And that's why in our practice, creating these country platforms, the Egypt country platform, we have all stakeholders together in one room, the multilateral development banks, our bilateral partners, private sector, and so forth. So this is a very important point that pushes for engagement. The innovation when it comes to financing tools from MDBs is also something that we're seeing today. There are green tools that the MDBs are providing, so we need to also explain how this works, particularly for the private sector.
Say a few more words, if you would, about the country platform and your experience with that. Is this something that is being done at the overall economy level, at an individual sectoral level? Is it a coordination tool or is it a troubleshooting tool?
No, it's so 2020 came with a lot of challenges, but also opportunities. And because we could not have missions where we would travel to our partners, they would come to meet us. So it was, using technology and leveraging technology, we could convene all our development partners together in one meeting. We did it on a sectoral level. So the line ministry would be able to explain its projects and its future financing needs. And then we would collate and coordinate the financing in a way that is transparent, that has complete country ownership, and also rules of governance in the monitoring. We did this with sovereign projects and ministries. We also did it with the private sector. So this is what we call multi-stakeholder platforms. This happened during 2020. We were able, through these platforms, to secure financing of $9.8 billion, 6.7 to sovereign projects and 3.2 to the private sector. And we continued in 2021 as well. And this is a key principle of our economic diplomacy that was documented in the book we launched in the presence of the president of ECOSOC. It's called Stakeholder Engagement Through Economic Diplomacy. And the three principles are multi-stakeholder platforms, the ODA SDG mapping, which is a very important tool that pushes transparency. So each and every dollar that comes to the country, whether it's a loan or a grant, you are able to see which SDG it basically is able to fulfill. And finally, having a common language with our development partners. And this comes the word global partnerships narrative, people at the core, projects in action and purpose as the driver. So this is a completely country-led exercise. We are very happy that we used COVID as an opportunity to operationalize what theory might have been calling for. Maybe one word that I can come out with is that we are all in this together and all of us have a role to play. Governments cannot do it alone. MDBs cannot do it alone. Private sector cannot do it alone. And it is through fostering multilateralism that we will be able to bridge the different gaps. And I think we are all speaking the same language. The idea is to operationalize all of this and work together to see it through.
Thank you so much.